So I really want to begin by thanking our partners at the Santa Barbara Public Library, and specifically Jen Lemberger, who was just speaking and manning the tech helm today. I'm really grateful for all the work that you do, and that your help today. That we would not be able to do it without you. So thank you so much. I'd also like to thank the Santa Barbara Poetry Fund and Poets and Writers for helping us with honoraria for our featured readers today. It's so important to the Mission Poetry Series to provide payment for the work that our artists do. And we wouldn't be able to do that without the SB Poetry Fund and Poets and Writers. So thank you to them. I'd like to express my gratitude to poet Paul Farrakano and sister Susan Blomstead for creating the series 12 years ago and for trusting me with its curation and its care. And I want to thank all of you, everyone who's here today, and our gifted feature poets, because it really takes a community to bring poetry to the people. And that is one of our central missions here. I just want to just go over a little bit of how we're going to run the reading. I'm just going to provide a very short intro to each poet. And when I'm finished speaking, I'll drop a link or two into the chat box where you can get more info on them, and also where you can buy their books. And then after each poet reads, Jen is going to share a PDF in the chat box of a digital broadside that we created for a poem by each poet. So you should be able to click on that and open it up on any of your own devices. But if anyone has any issues with that, just please let us know in the chat and we'll get back to you after the reading and figure it all out. Finally, I also invite everyone to post questions or comments or shout outs in the chat box. We love hearing from people, and we'll have a short Q&A with our poets at the end of the reading. So without any further ado, let me go ahead and introduce our first poet. And there's some links to a little info, more info about her and where to buy her books. Her name is Felicia Zamora, and she's the author of 6 books of poetry, including I Always Carry My Bones, which I just finished reading and is wonderful, and won the Iowa Poetry Prize. She also wrote Body of Render, which won the Benjamin Saltman Award, and Of Form and Gather, winner of the Andres Montoya Poetry Prize. She's received all kinds of fellowships and residencies, such as from Canto Mundo and Ragdale Foundation. And she's an assistant professor of poetry at the University of Cincinnati and associate poetry editor for the Colorado Review. Felicia is one of the hardest working poets I know, not only in terms of her own creative work, but in helping to lift up the work of others. Please welcome Felicia Zamora.
Oh, Emma, thank you so much for that introduction. And coming from you, Emma is a fierce friend. And for Emma to say that I help lift up the voices of other poets is so honoring, because I feel that Emma does the exact same thing. And a huge congratulations to Emma for being the new Poet Laureate of Santa Barbara. That is amazing. Thank you, thank you. For inviting me here today to be part of the Mission Poetry Series. I'm so excited to be reading with Terri and to be reading with Joshua, who are artists who I admire and also get to share space with. So that feels really cool. As well as, those of you who are tuning in, poetry on a Saturday afternoon for me, because it's 4 o'clock, so it's kind of later in the afternoon, is a really cool thing. And so thank you all for joining us. I'm going to read a few pieces and start us off with some new work that I've written. The second piece I'll read is from I Always Carry My Bones, which just came out from University of Iowa Press. And then I'll end with a piece that I'm currently working on, which is a crown of sonnets. And so it's actually not even finished, but I'm going to read a couple sections from the crown of sonnets, which I hope you'll find interesting. And we'll give you a little bit of taste of where my mind and thought processes are right now. Interstitial archaeology. Make my mouth a temple now, without the severing of life or organ, to unhaunt the silences Audre Lorde warns us about. You run your tongue from palate to vellum. The Smithsonian article tells of a gold foil amulet, tongue-shaped, found in an Egyptian mummy. You think of the embalmer's thumb and forefinger lowering the golden replica into jaw, missing muscle, gap of where the tongue once lay. Careful plot to ensure speech in the afterlife. To cut out the oblong shape of organ, landscape of textured papillae. In styloid process slice, making room for elements, AU, atomic number 79, primordial isotope, and exist before formation of Earth. Imagine placing the first star between molars. How you close any chasm in hold of such wealth-drawn worlds. How you masticate posthumously gaps from mind to mandible. Aaron jumping on your 9-year-old flesh, yelling, "You're the spick shit pile." And you waited and thin, and your maxillary teeth made of mountains, unable to unhinge the moment Darcy admits, "I meant to pay you 2,000 more. Whoops. How your skin and presence unequal to her whiteness in her eyes. And still you unfurl no sound. How you masticate posthumously these compounding deaths. All that mouths spin and unspin. From roots removal from hyoid bone, symbol of dereliction of ideation and vertebrate anatomy. A cave rising from mutilation, turned gift and Taposiris magna. In cavities becoming temples, from thousands of years buried in sand, and then excavation, and you with organ of gold whisper and heaves, what atonement? Devil's tongue. Born of heat, born from the world's belly, endemic to home, Mexico, penduncle of me, and yet I cross lines towed in dirt, lines drawn in thought that any species may be contained if enclosed hard enough, long enough, if watched and guarded. Speak me. No, not Phaerocactus latispinus, not my Latin name, not my colonized name. Speak me from crown to neck to vascular tissues. Speak me from spines. See my claws and be warned. Speak me out of the mouths of serpents. How Quetzalcoatl despised subjugation, adopted the human condition, and my body a shrine to terrestrial connectivity. Who I am, one who flowers late in autumn, late in winter, spitting fire from my aerials, my sunken spots, places where my spine rises and rises. Call me shallow root. How my systems drag wide, close to surface, so I may imbibe what I need before evaporation. Volume of me expands when I must hold, contracts when I must go without. To those who wish to poke holes in me, keep me caged by gates, withhold resources from me to let me dry up. Hear my whispers in tepid sand, biomimicry, how I adapt away from you, biomimicry, as if to chant my way into something worthy of your affection. And the last three pieces I'm going to read come from this brand new piece called Crown of Invisibility. And it really begins to meditate on all the ways the invisible calls at individuals, and specifically calls at people of color and women of color in our existence, and are also our relationship to the natural world, and how we as people of color feel that nature inside of us as us. And at times, we are as devastated in our societies by treatment of this larger dominant white supremacy narrative that we're trying to claw apart and tear down. So this is 3 sections from Crown of Invisibility. My body, a ghost of an outline, behind empty glass, reverberates. I watch 2 white women in spandex stand in my lawn. A young boy flips a ball in his hands, mouse mother, and then fucker, sailing the ball into my window. 2 women continue to talk. I open my door. Hey, can I help you? Falls from my jaws, breath to a weathered dandelion head. I thought I heard something, and my mind questions neighborly and whiteness in one synaptic fire, hit my window. One white mother looks me up and down. No, she squints with her eyes, turns her head a swivel to wipe my form. Trampoline hinges spring and spring from the neighbor's yard, screams of children on woven polypropylene canvas, suspended, dove-like, above the darkness of mat. A lamb's unknown bleat before shear of season or before slaughter to eat. Shears of season, bleats before slaughter eat the sky above Cavantown. Your forearms over railing, moist air in your lungs. You left the desert to whittle your mind from aorta back to cranium, to divert the narrative, a narrative burning in your guts. In this law, stories build inside you. The thing about the Danish folktale is the emperor wants to be duped, wants to believe in a type of specialness, to walk his bare cock and balls into a crowd of hungry mouths, to say, I choose to be barren. Go fuck your emaciated bodies I created. The type of specialness rival to zebra mussels, filtering and storing polychlorinated biphenyl and other contaminants to feed back to birds and fish that feast on their molluscan foot. This toxic story, specialness, astray in mind, skin color, blood, and whose bare ass gets exposed. Mind astray in whose skin color, whose blood gets exposed to the bare violence of shootings. A nation sits on its ass on gun control. 8 more people murdered in Indianapolis, just weeks after the shooting at a Boulder King Supers, just a week after massacres at 3 spas in Atlanta. A nation sits on its ass, ignores the crowds filling Logan Square Park with cries for Adam Toledo, cries for justice for all Black and brown people killed at the hands of police. A nation sits laminating an open wound, vulnus scopularium, anatomic site of injury, repeats in stagnation, repeats in stagnation, repeats in stagnation, 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 atomic site, In AD 79, Vesuvius erupted volcanic avalanches, baked humans to death. Cranial cavity fragments show a brain turned to glass. 24 million minds on fire. A sharp dawn rises. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Felicia, for that amazing reading and such powerful poems, such important poems. I'm going to go ahead and ask Jen if she could, which she already did. She went ahead and shared a poem by Felicia that we created a broadside for. It's from her latest book, I Always Carry My Bones. And if you click on that, you'll have access to it. And if you have any issues with that, again, please just reach out to us and we'll figure that out after the reading. Thank you again, Felicia, for joining us here today. I want to go ahead now and move on to our next poet. And I'm going to go ahead and drop his information into the link. There we go. I did it twice. So nice. I did it twice. His name is Joshua Escobar, and he grew up in California in the Inland Empire and lives now here with us in Santa Barbara. He is the author of the chapbooks California Voltage and XXOX FM. His experimental debut collection, Bareback Nightfall, which is right here. And I know that like it's kind of, okay, here you can see it now. It just came out about a year ago from Noemi Press, and it explores a queer dystopia through the eyes of a DJ. And I also want to mention that this amazing book, which is as much a piece of visual art as it is a book of poems, is now a finalist for the California Book Award. So woohoo, Joshua. We're all really excited and proud of him. He is the co-editor of Open Fruit, which is the student magazine at SBCC, and he's also the director of creative writing there, where we both teach and where he inspires students and colleagues with his intellect and imagination and compassion. So please welcome Joshua Escobar.
Thanks, Emma, for that really generous introduction. Emma is an incredible poet, and we're just so lucky to have her as the Poet Laureate. And for me to have her as a colleague, like I'm all over the place. I'm always getting things wrong and messing up. And Emma is just like so cool about it. And so I'm really happy to have her as a collaborator and to be reading today with two really amazing poets who I'm meeting for the first time in Felicia Zamora and then Terri Ellen Cross Davis. And I just hope to get to know you and your work so much more, and being like, I feel like a junior poet, and I have so much more to learn from you both and your amazing community work. And thanks everyone again for joining. You know, today, this event probably would be hosted in person and we would fly out and Felicia, and so we'll have to do that next time. But I'm glad that we could all be here in this digital space. So I'll read a poem from my book, and like Emma was saying, I do some visual stuff and it changes like kind of section by section, but I'll share some of that. Atomic Girls to Trude La Presa. In a parking lot, feeling the casual stop of muscle, vehicles dead asleep alongside stucco rises, sore haircut mess. I never thought I'd grow up to be so gay. Sun dying valley, head and shoulders awake. You know, treasure fiends waiting with more sacks than Santa for a cheap ride out of Pomona. Stray flyers are piercing the pepper trees on the 10, While I try, revolve my beat up tires. Left turn, a refinery, demos, anti-gravity. And that we're super broke. Another parking lot, stray boxer wants only papas fritas. Yellow light, a billow bites into the junction of avocado messengers, scuba perros, peach tree mujeres. The eyes of Arcana lets me ride in her truck bed alongside weed whackers and jugs of herbicide. We talk voltage showers and froth, lips and Mexica juice. I used to mix brackish water with old tequila, polka dot strawberries, and prep, aged in her garage, popular with our broke-ass friends. Dirt channels inside as her truck steals onto the trails de lavender chaos. My neighborhood appears across Cayente Valley. By November, it will be abandoned, the air cold enough to bust windows and for desperate coyotes to dip into the houses of pigeons. Others get used to this mess. The copper strays eyeing your back, CDs and old magazines in the riverbeds, the citrus fest. The devil stands in yellow drapes with a high collar, holding a sack of wild Savoya. That rug under him will outlive us. The valley draws so many mysterious gente, juicy tongues, juicy ears, Edam confetti. Your friends die or become dead to you. Night curls up in the dirt in the Valley of Sun. Valley of Sun where I felt love and it was citrus. Where I felt love and it was Bert Cilantro. Valley of Sun where I felt love and it was heat and retro. Valley of Sun where I felt love and it was at noche. Valley of Sun where I felt love and it was bananas in El Garaje. It was no anchor. Where I felt love and it was later. Where I felt love and I was pretty oblivious. Valley of Sun where I felt love and it was chingona and disco guayuajesa. Where I felt love and it was chile slashed and burned. Where I felt love and it was Chihuahua beauty supplies. Valley of Sun where I felt and it was. This poem is one that Emma has championed across the digital realm, and I'm glad that she has. It's called Everybody in General. Let's kiss Frank as in Frankenstein. Let's kiss people in cages. Let's kiss nebulae, double-crossed. Let's kiss straight people, mauling whatever they love. Let's kiss the sexuality of other cities. Let's kiss unused doctrines and volumes of knowledge. Let's kiss lovers playing up the doom. Let's kiss feathers versus chasm. Let's kiss chasm versus feathers. Let's kiss Saint Francisco of the Latin X's. Let's kiss agony to death. Let's kiss Ra's bombness. Let's kiss a baby queer's hoe streak. Let's kiss another sexy guy's disinterest. Let's kiss the fruity aftertaste of Lucifer's skull and bones soup. Let's kiss youth drilled anew. Even as it's impossible to see each other, let's kiss. And this next section comes from a different, so this one comes from a different section with a different typeface, and it's inspired by like magazines. And if you've been following like typesetters, for those who love fonts out there, the same guy who did Cardi B's interview, like he did this font or typeface for Obama's interview. It's called Canela, and it's kind of serious and heavy. And this poem's called Ashtray's Music. You catch me staring at an egotistical urinal Friday, meanly like any other lime-juiced American love. It's quite possible that threats move about in the darkness unless Copernicus is thrown into whatever we're making. I fill myself with cold water to the core. Tomorrow would be your birthday. You are a long way back. your revamped eyes on Prasita. Donna Fortune has her own pedal now, and it's not because we eat less. Tomorrow is for the post office with some possibility of getting Kennedy stamps. My ears get vexed with your hands on them, and I actually care about the future, even though I am not enough for this legislature. He says, love means to finish in Spanish rather than the English. The wind burns with your absence as your atoms stir inside my chest. We cave at our own risk. You make me ooze, immature venom, blow my fantasies. Coming early is never a problem because you have to have me. Deserving nights become robotic and other guys make me hot. I had their fever and you said my skin was like a banana peel. My feelings get in the way, but there is never much I can do about them except rest when I have fever and dance and mess to get over the chills. I am not like your mail, covered with a blanket in a backseat. This is how I'll wind up. And then this last poem is about my great-great-grandmother, Trinidad, who was the first to cross the border in our family. Trinidad, my great-grandmother, was an orphan raised by her uncle Benito Lopez. As a baby, she was left alone while Benito worked. When she was 8 years old, Trinidad began babysitting for rich families in Santa Rosalia, Camargo. At 12, she became engaged to the love of her life, Maxiamino Yanijos, who was the chauffeur for the priest. She went for marriage counseling, but you know the things priests do with kids. Trinidad refused. Maxiamino got mad at the priest and was soon fired. Then along came Pancho Villa. In those days, you joined Pancho's army or you were shot, so Maxiamino rode with him for years. The two men posed for a photograph, their belts of bullets slung across their chest, yet Pancho never gave him leave. The first child died of a fever. Their second came down with smallpox and Trinidad was pregnant again. An old lady taught her how to make candies so she can support herself. Still, every day was a struggle. Trinidad was playing with the other girls in the front yard one spring or summer day when Maxiamino grabbed her, put her on a horse, and then rode to the Juarez River. Trinidad then climbed into a canoe with her two children and as many of their possessions as it could hold. Maxiamino pushed it across by swimming. Helped by a Thea in New Mexico and the Lady Melendez, Trinidad and Maxiamino moved to Roswell, later farming for Roosevelt for $2,000 a year. Trinidad picked cotton, pulled weeds from the cotton Olympia, cooked for a dozen farmmen, ran a hatchery, made her man build her a house, had 9 children, 3 of whom died young. They were always poor, but grew watermelons, cantaloupes, tomatoes, chile. Trinidad stone Huacalito, her love shack, so badly built it had no partitions, it is gone. So is she, past a few years before I was born. She never returned to Santa Rosalia Camargo. Trinidad, the girl who fled from Pancho Villa. On the ride, the warmest spot must have been where she held her man. What she had to forbear, I can't know, but she would have told me when I was old enough that love is dangerous. Thanks everyone for listening.
That was so beautiful. I love that tribute to your grandmother. That was just that last line, just like was an arrow to the heart. Thank you so much, Joshua, for joining us today. And Jen has gone ahead and dropped off a poem by Joshua that we've created into a broadside in the chat box. If anyone would like to click on that and save it for your own viewing pleasure whenever you want a bit of poetry in your life. So I'm going to go ahead and move on now to our grand finale. And I'm going to put a little info on her and where to get her books. Our final poet is Terri Ellen Cross Davis, and she's the author of A More Perfect Union. And this is it right here, which I also just finished reading. And which won the Journal Charles B. Wheeler Poetry Prize. And she's also the author of Haint, which won the Ohiana Book Award for Poetry. Other honors that Terri holds are the Robert H. Winter Memorial Prize from the Poetry Society of America and a fellowship from Cave Canem. Terri is the poetry coordinator for the Folger Shakespeare Library in Washington, D.C., and she just does some wonderful programming. And I kind of wanted to plug something she's got coming up on June 9th. They are doing a virtual and botanically inspired poetry workshop with Sherwin Beatsu. I recommend you check that out. I love Terri's poems. Because they speak to the real experiences of women. And she does that by authentically combining this wry humor and observation and lament. So I'm just thrilled that she could beam in from Maryland today. Please welcome Terri Ellen Cross Davis.
Emma, thank you so much for that wonderful, wonderful intro from the Poet Laureate of Santa Barbara. So, and it's been such a thrill to sit here and listen. And I have to tell you, my husband's a poet. He's been chiming in. He was like, oh, that was a anaphora. I love the anaphora in Joshua's poem. I'm all over the sonnets. Like we're both like enjoying and getting so much out of this. So it's like almost a sin that it should be this good. But so I'm just going to jump in here and read. This is all coming from A More Perfect Union. And this first poem is called A Black Woman Gets a Window Seat on Aer Lingus. And so everyone should know Aer Lingus is the dominant airline in and out of Ireland. So I've had the privilege to go to Ireland in 2016 and 2017. Absolutely love it. They adore poets. Lovely place. Everyone should adore poets. So there you go. All right. A Black Woman Gets a Window Seat on Aer Lingus. And I just want to check my time. Okay. And so we'll start here. Enough, Ireland. For all your lush effusion of color, inside me blooms a masochistic loneliness. Give me the screws I know best, the policeman quick to test my yes, sir, as acidless. Trigger the Midwest. Never on the Bible school tests was this. Crucifixion kills, not nails into feet or wrists, but the weight borne upon the breast. You suffocate slowly in your own flesh. As I return to the upright cross of the US, I breathe easier, I breathe less. And so in this, so we're gonna skip. There is Felicia read a poem and I was like, okay, that's it. I'm reading White Barbie. So there you go, Felicia. There. You brought this on. All right, White Barbie. White Barbie's body fit easily between two black iron railings. No need for bondage. She was always perfectly cast as a damsel in distress. White Barbie in The Sacrifice the Cookie Monster. White Barbie stolen away by the handsome thief. White Barbie discovered on a desert island. Dressed well for her role, one shoulder bare, a silver column gown, heels flung during the struggle. Sometimes she'd scream, faint, horror frozen on her painted face. Oh, the monster would have her. The gown would unsnap, shimmying down slim hips, nippleless breasts, plastic cones in golden afternoon light. A stark trail of blonde strands hanging limply from Cookie Monster's maw of a mouth. White Barbie, fragile, wanted, pretty, the best victim. And so I'm in a collective of Black women poets called Black Ladies Brunch Collective. We put out an anthology in 2017, Not Without Our Laughter. And part of what made it fun in the anthology was we chose poems by other poets in our collective to respond to. So this poem responds to Saida Agostini, an incredible poet herself. Her poem is called Harriet Tubman is a Lesbian, and this is the response: knowledge of the brown body. If Harriet Tubman had been a lesbian, I would know the brown body had been valued outside of chattel to the point of risk. I would know an ebony nipple spoke its hushed volumes from inside another sweet brown mouth, eager to know its secrets. I would know a brown belly had been showered with a free tongue's pulsing intention. I would know the brown hips of a woman were stolen back for freedom's sake. I would know that brown thighs thunder was enough to make a woman walk into the abyss of the deep south and come out clapping on fire with black love. I would know that this body I own had once been coveted for its sake and its sake alone. How sacred I could hold that knowledge. I could palm it, my fingers deep inside the agent that helped break the back of the Confederacy. And so I'm going to switch gears a little bit. And I love to write about pleasure in the body. And I love women's bodies. I love my body, right? It's given me two incredible children, even though the one is an Amazon and now taller than I am, but that's okay. That's what I wanted. And so, and so I appreciate all that it can do. And so this is called Ode to Orgasms. When the wild abandonment of pleasure calls, trilling its glorious song, you surrender, forget yourself, respond in kind, moaning an ecstatic ode to the rivers of flesh, the delta, the well-plowed field. This back-arching work results in trembling limbs, shuddering, simpering joy. Not all is submission. You sought this treasured bird, whether in sun-dappled beds, sudden on a Saturday, while children frolic a floor below, or on a sodden tree trunk in the aftermath of a February's record-breaking snow. Be it a quick tryst in a hotel stairwell, desire domineering a long drive, you committed, flung open the shutters of propriety to pursue this elusive creature. Now grasp its golden tail feathers, leap from mountaintop to mountaintop, gulp that sweet, sweet fleeting air. So I created goddesses in A More Perfect Union, and I'm a big fan of, Greek, Roman, Norse, Egyptian mythology. I'm also a huge comic book fan, mostly Marvel, but I will dabble in DC. So creating goddesses was a natural, like a natural thing. So this is the goddess of anger, because I can't often be as angry as I want to be, and as often as is deserved. The goddess of anger. Did he touch you? Did he hit you with jagged words or closed fists? Did he laugh at you? Were you polite even then? Were you lava under? I'll use the dust of his bones for tea. I'll rise, vengeful and caustic, a florid fury steeped in seething. I'll make his eyes bleed. Let me in. I'll dissect him unflinchingly. A backhand slap, a rake of fingernails. I'll spit my small mercies. I'll dance on him in stilettos, paint my toenails OBI red while the blood congeals. Let me be your ignition point, your pitch, the whoosh of your hot, sweet breath. I'm all your swallowed heat simmered into flesh. I, too, can lift burdens. Let go of fear, of retribution. Let go of decorum and shame. Ride rage until it bucks, then jump on it again. Damn it, let me in. And so I did want to, Joshua, I loved how you brought in your grandmother. I have a poem about my grandmother, but it's a little longer, so I'm going to read this other poem, which involves her too, and a great aunt, my beloved great aunt, Lola Mae, who just passed away. Lola Mae, who drove the highways in California and taught me how to curse and make cornbread from scratch in a cast iron skillet. Doesn't get any better than that. And taught me about haints and skins. And she did all the things. My beloved Lola Mae. Lola visits the underworld. Lola did what Orpheus couldn't. She snatched her big sister straight from hell. Folks say the war changed Sis's man, but he wasn't no dummy before. He came from this shit, putting hands on women. The first time he hit Sis, Lola was little, maybe 7, maybe 6. She balled up her tiny fist and punched him in the back, called her brothers, sisters, sorry bastards for not backing her up. There was another time he hit, and another, until the day came he put Sis in the hospital. A metal plate in her head, stitches where the knife cut. For 7 days, she was a shade of herself. When she finally walked out, Lola was right there next to Sis's man. Baby Sis Betty came for backup. 4 of them in the car. Ride ain't never been quieter. Sis's man dropped them home on his way to work. His heel barely left the door sill when the sisters pulled suitcases out. The bus ride north was long. Once, twice, Sis said she thought about going back. But Lola told her, Sis, don't look back. Don't ever look back. She never did. That fool Orpheus could learn something. And so just 3 more poems. So I mentioned my Amazon of a daughter. She's 5, 6 and a half at 12. And yeah, no joke. And my son is 10, and he is just the sweetest, sweetest, sweetest boy. He actually said to me the other day, give me the ingredients and I'll make us breakfast. And I was like, okay, love you. And so this poem is called Partus Sequitur Ventrum. And it has an epigraph that reads, a Latin phrase that stands for the principle that the children of an enslaved woman are themselves born as slaves and owned by their mother's master. It's in 2 parts. 1, morning. His knobby 6-year-old knees, his anxious pace as if to keep step with the question's steady overflow. Is there a giant octopus in the Bermuda Triangle? How is paper made? How do fireworks know when to explode? No one told me Black boys could burn so bright. Wait, I am wrong. The dark sky has seen their fire snuffed by white hoods, malevolent blue eyes and bluer uniforms. White women's screams, all have been matched to their tender wood. So I hug my son tight, kiss the curl crop so close it's straight. My mother eye insatiable. He is dessert and I'll always have seconds. Each morning I lick my thumb, clean him up good, wishing in vain the amniotic sac had dried to armor. 2, night. His lisp, loose, syrupy sweet, sneaks into my ear. Feel its heat, small source more flicker than flame, flanked by arms still dreaming of muscle. He claims, my squishy stomach, the best pillow. If the security of our locked arms could extend beyond growth spurts, clocks, calendars, to the someone interviewing him, to the someone following him in the store, to the someone holding my son's life in trembling fingers poised above a phone's keypads, let my love be a note safety pinned to his chest. Send him back alive, unharmed. As a Black mother in America, I know my wells are birthright, pinned with iron, pinned in ink. And so this second to last poem is called Thank You, Jesus. I just read it as my mom loves this one, even though it's what it's about. You know, mothers, gotta love them. Thank you, Jesus. When the blue and red sirens pass you, when the schools call because your child beat the exam and not a classmate, when the smartphone drops but does not crack, the rush escaping your mouth betrays your upbringing. Thank you, Jesus, a balm over the wound. When the mammogram finds only density, when the playground tumble results in a bruise, not a broken bone, like steam from a hot tea kettle. Thank you, Jesus, and the pent-up fear vents upward out. Maybe it's a hand over breast, supplication learned deeper than flesh, as if one could shush the soul, the fluttering heartbeat with 3 words. Maybe it's not so dire, an almost trip on the sidewalk, the accumulated sales total showing savings upon savings. Maybe it's as small as an empty seat on the metro, or maybe thank you, Jesus becomes the refrain every time your husband pulls into the driveway alive and whole, and no one has mistaken him for all the Black scary things. You mutter it, helpless to stop yourself from the invocation of a grandmother who gave you your first Bible. You say it because your mother, even knowing your doubt as a vested commodity, still urges prayer. You learned early to cast the net. Thank you, Jesus. And it's a sweet needle that gathers the fraying thread, hemming security in steady stitches. From birth, you've heard this language. As an adult, you've seen religion used nakedly as ambition. Yet, this sacrifice of praise still slips past your lips, this lyrical martyr of your dying faith. And oh, well, I might just leave it there. I was going to read one more, but I want to leave time. You said read one more? One more? Okay. All right. So I'll leave with this poem. And this is, this poem suggests revolution. My therapist told me to lean into my anger, and I did. This poem no longer consents to play mammy or to wet nurse a seething rage at her own black teat. America, your teeth have come in. You nip too much. This poem refuses to play religion. A Bible verse will not absolve you, America. If the pursuit of happiness, life, and liberty came from the Creator, she is about ready to backhand you in the face. This poem will not be your bottom bitch, America. This poem does not consent to Blackness being window dressing for the diversity brochure of a country where the board of directors never changed. This poem reads the fine print on you, America. This poem consents to be black ink, a clenched fist, pepper spray, and black souls marching on asphalt. Freedom for and from you, America. If need be, this poem consents to double as witness, the dotted I in the missing reparations decree. Until then, let this poem heckle you, America. Let it yell, "God damn, US, choke on cotton," while fanning itself and the flames. Understand, this poem doesn't want to be bloodthirsty. It would rather write about the cleanse of a cloudburst than the vengeful force of a water hose. In truth, this poem courts hope. Like a Volta, it wants to turn the page, writing, "America, let us pen a new document, not a perpetual union, but a chokehold removed. As a black throat breathing freely is a self-evident truth, let these lines be facts submitted to a candid world. And this poem, when spoken or read, let it alter, let it abolish you." Thank you so much for this opportunity to read with you all. And thank you so much for your incredible work today.
Thank you so much, Terri. That was just amazing. It's, I read your book, and just hearing you give voice to your poems adds a whole other layer of music to them. And I'm just really, I actually have a question about that during like the, little 10-minute Q&A we're going to do, but I wanted to point out to everyone that Terri's broadside is in the chat if you want to click on that and take a look. And it's another poem about Ireland. So I was kind of happy that you talked a little bit about Ireland when you were opening up your reading. I want to go ahead and invite people to click on the chat box. And right, that what Jen just dropped, and into the Q&A box if you want to have, if you have any questions at all for the poets about their work or their creative life or any of the poems that they've read. And I kind of wanted to open it up by asking Terri about her process, because while I was reading A More Perfect Union, I just noticed a lot of musicality and internal rhymes within the poems. And I'm wondering if, when you write them, are you considering that? Is there a form that you're creating or following, or are you simply working on instinct as you're drafting your work to give it, because it's very unique and it really has a true sound to it. So I'm just super curious about that.
So I'm a child of hip hop. I remember 6th grade with the kids battling in the back of the bus who could beatbox, and who, anytime you say 6 minutes in our house, we chime in, Dougie Fresh, you're on. So it's like, so hip hop had a huge impact on me. And then, I have to recognize, working at the Folger for as long as I've been there 16 years now. And being around a lot of Shakespeare, those rhymes get in you. It's like, it's in your blood. And rhythm is a thing that's been in my blood, even as many people have tried to beat it out of my ancestors. It refuses. It stays alive, and it wants to communicate, and it wants to talk. So I'm aware of that. And I'm also I'm also reading the poems out loud as I work on them. As I always tell everyone, I'm like, I assume everyone should do that. And I assume everyone does that. But when I'm reading it out loud, that's when I really have to hear the music. And then just trying, because those rhymes just kind of come in there. So some of it is instinct, some of it is just being a sponge that has absorbed so much. And I also love, love, love music. So I listen to music every day. If it's not my beloved Prince, or Harjo, it's someone. I'm listening to music all the time. So that too has an impact.
That's a really good point about like constantly listening to music. I think it really does kind of infuse your bones when you're in those phases. And I feel like the pandemic is something that really activated that in me again. I used to constantly listen to music. It was a huge part of my life. My husband's a musician. But I think that with the pandemic, I just really re-entered that world on a cellular level. That I had kind of drifted a little away from. So I'm really glad you brought that up, that how it's like a daily experience for you. And I also love that you like combined this idea of, not the idea, the experience of hip hop and Shakespeare. And, I think that a lot of people think of that. A lot of my students would think of that as living in two separate categories, right? When in fact, they're both subscribing to the sounds of words. So that's a great answer. Thank you so much. I have a question from Lauren Basilar. She was the Poet Laureate of Santa Barbara before me. So thank you, Lauren, for coming. And let's see what she says. She says, I noticed your talent in addressing. Is it something that gets you going? Lauren, is this for Terri? Let's find out. Well, maybe we can all answer it. All right, let's start with Terri, and then just kind of, because I think all of you had a little bit of an epistolary vibe going on in some of your poems. So I would like to kind of hear that. Yeah, thanks, Lauren.
Unmute. Yeah. I'm at the point now where I just feel like I have to call America out on his BS. Because I'm kind of sick of it. And it's like, and so, yeah, there's that, but it's also the persona part of it too, because I'm not allowed to do that in some respects. So my anger, my fury wants me to call it out. My fear and the wrath of history in this country toward Black people who have spoken out, or anyone who's spoken out, is immediate and damaging and death. And so you become afraid of speaking out, but it has to be done. So yeah, a lot of this is like me kind of trying on different voices so I can have a larger microphone than the voice that I have, and seeing if that gets to the heart of what I'm feeling, and if that exercises a lot of the fury that is naturally born within me from being a person alive and intelligent in this country, and seeing what you see.
Okay. And someone was also asking if the last poem that you read is in the book, and I believe it is. I think it's the last poem in A More Perfect Union. Am I right, Terri?
It's the second to last one.
Second to last. Okay.
The titular poem is A More Perfect Union, which, yeah, but yeah, it's I kept having issues when I laid the book out. Last or last? Yeah, the second to last.
Okay. Thank you. Felicia, do you want to address the idea of addressing in poems and speaking directly to someone or, several entities throughout?
Yeah, I think for me, the older I get, the more my voices in my art take on that which needs to be said. And I agree with Terri so much that like our art is a place that has a boundlessness and a limitlessness that our actual physical forms and even our own minds have been oppressed and have been walled up and bordered and through society through a multitude of ways. But on the page and in the art, we can explore that limitlessness. We can say what needs to be said. through our voice, but the voices of others as well that we're exploring on the page. Because of course, with the poem, the voice, you don't want to assume authorial presence in the poem. But at the same time, there's a certain amount of authorial presence, especially with BIPOC poets, as well as queer trans poets and poets with disabilities, that we are part of our art, right? Like, we are both simultaneously being created and creators at the same time. And so for me, thinking about the address, I try to, when I have something that needs to be said to that dominant white supremacy narrative, like, there's so much that I'm saying to that, because I'm angry and I'm sad and I'm lamenting and I'm trying to be joyful in the world that I'm carving, besides those things that have been really going on in history with like a low H for my history and a capital H for the larger history. But at the same time, I'm also trying to code for my beloveds. I'm also trying to code for those who are near and dear to me, who are other poets of color, persons of color, people who have been marginalized, and trying to find a way to say, hey, there is nothing special about me or my art, and if I can say it, you can say it. This idea of allowing voice for those of us who have historically been voiceless.
Yeah, I like this. I like how you phrase that, like this, like allowing, making a space for. It's almost like the poem itself becomes a place of gathering and solidarity and friendship, to someone who encounters it. Thank you. Thank you for that thoughtful response. And then I kind of want to just to pose that same question to Joshua about like how he addresses uh, people and places directly in his poems.
Well, like, I feel like for a long time I didn't do anything direct, and it comes out, I think it comes from like just me being a kid growing up in the Inland Empire and just not having access to any kind of like fine art institution or cultural institutions, and always being seen as like second rate, in the media. So I never like thought like prevailing political discourses, like they still had that tinge of like, well, these are for people like in cities or people that are like middle class or upper class, and they're not really for you. And I felt like like also there was a little bit like the side I would take and what I would have to say was so obvious that it wasn't really worth like kind of like political or poetic inquiry. So I think that's kind of where I wrote like a lot of or some poems. But then I think over the past, few years, and that's like really changed, because like the place of people of color and in Western culture, it's like is always being erased and messed with and distorted, that I think some sort of like direct address is necessary and can be like the beginning of something else, and I think for queer people it's like it's just it's changed a lot. So like being direct and being part of the scene, because now like young people are more queer than me and my friends could ever dreamed of. So I think it's on us to keep being direct and addressing what needs to be addressed, and realizing that even if I'm not going through this problem, it's still affecting a lot of other people, and to kind of like create a ladder for others. So that's kind of how I see addressing things. I'm not sure if that really made sense, but
Yeah.
right.
Totally. That totally made sense. And again, like I really like how you the spirit of what you're doing when you address you have those direct addresses, as you put it, is about creating ladders and opportunities and opening up spaces. And I think that's like one of the amazing things that art does, and certainly the art of language, is to create conversations and bring us together. And I mean, we're experiencing that right now. So yeah, thank you for that. I just wanted to see if anyone else has any other questions at all. Please drop them into the chat or into the Q&A, and I would love to hear from you, and I'd love the poets to hear from you. But of course, you know, if you have heard all the information you need, then you don't need to drop anything into the chat.
I have a question for Felicia.
Yes.
And, you know, obviously work at the Folger Shakespeare Library. Sonnets, Crown of Sonnets. Tell me why you wanted to go into this form and what attracted you to working with the Crown of Sonnets. And I love those new sonnets that you read. And where are those available? I mean, I know you said you were still working on them, so they're not out yet.
No, and thank you so much for asking about that. I've actually never written a Crown of Sonnets, and I'm using the form of, you know, the repeating last line being the first line and the 14 lines, but I am not using the iambic pentameter. It sort of sneaks in there a little bit, but I'm really not adhering to the iambic pentameter in any way, nor am I doing the end rhyme. And so for me, it's because I love form, to disobey it. Like, I feel like that's why we're here as artists, to understand what form is and then to mold it to what we need to feel safe. And for me, form is something that I turn to as a tool, because it's like bumper rails when I'm wanting to talk about something that feels really like it has the potential to rewound. Because the pieces that I read were much more of me step back from a voice at times, but there are other ones where I'm sort of leaning more into my own experiences. And when that happens, the form sort of holds me, and it allows me to feel like I can create this world that feels more robust inside that form. And so the crown that I'm writing, I'm really letting the idea of invisibility ruminate inside the form too. And it's pushing me. I think limits push me when it comes to form, to discover something about the poetic world that's being created, but then also really to discover something about me as well. So thank you for asking. And they're not anywhere. I'm just over halfway done with the crown, and I haven't really been sending them anywhere yet. So, oh, and Terri, I did want to say, I Always Carry My Bones. Part of that was written in Ireland in 2018. And so you mentioned Ireland, and it's so funny that I went to Ireland because I felt so heavy. It's the first time I was living in Arizona, and it was the first time I'd been so close physically to the US-Mexico border. And it was really taking a toll on me, both like my interiority was just sort of being torn apart, of like trying to figure out, like, what does it mean to be Mexican American and have never been that close to the border, and to really the fight that's going on for a lot of Mexican Americans right now, and immigration, and, you know, just the horridness. And so I went to Ireland, and as I was writing part of this manuscript, I realized I can't run from myself. Nor should I want to. And I discovered that in Ireland in like a really strange way. So there's a lot of like laws and talking about these really strange spaces that were in Ireland. But I thought that you might find that interesting.
Oh yeah. I know. I'm so excited to read more. I'm so excited to read more.
How has the pandemic, question. How has writing in the pandemic been for you, Terri and Felicia?
Well, I'm a mom of two, wife of one, and we also adopted a dog, Wakanda, and a black cat named Onyx the Familiar, all during the pandemic. So it's not been happening a lot because it just is so hard to carve the time. And it's like either get up at the crack of dawn and or either stay up really late. I mean, I've written, and that's it. I've written a few poems, but it has been difficult. I felt pulled like taffy in every direction. And therefore, when I get to the direction of me, I'm super tired by the time I get to just me. As my son collapses on the couch next to me. So it has been really difficult. I'm going away into Florida with my husband for artist fellowship in August. So I'm really looking forward to a week away. But yeah,
where are you going? Where in Florida?
To the Hermitage Artist Fellowship. So we're really excited that we both got it. And then I'm going to Sewanee in July. And so I'm just like, if I can get like 12 days, if I can get a week, I can write. It's all back here. It's on the dartboard of my brain. I just don't have the time to pull it out and play with it and revise it. So yeah, it's been hard. What about you, Felicia? Because
Terri, my colleague, Leah Stewart, is actually the director of the Sewanee Writers Conference. If you meet her, you'll have to say hi. But I finished I Always Carry My Bones in September of 2019, and then I went on the job market and was applying and interviewing right before the pandemic had hit. And so I usually give myself about 6 to 8 months after I finish a manuscript anyway to just do nothing, like to read and to really rejuvenate again. And then the pandemic hit. And for me, I think like so many people, there's an understanding of grief. Like I couldn't understand my own grief, not only toward the pandemic, but just toward the murder and the racial injustice that was taking place simultaneously. Like the fact that was happening at the same time, it felt like something that my art wasn't ready. My art was just telling me like, you need to try to be for a while. And then in August, I started to write again. And it's been slower. It's been completely different. My process has surprised me. It's not the process that I've had in the past. And I'm just trying to show myself a lot of grace. And so I'm in the middle of this new manuscript now, and it's moving, and it comes and goes when it needs to, and I'm just trusting in it. But I hadn't written a word for about a year almost, it felt like, and I was okay with it. Joshua, how about you? How's your experience been?
Well, like I feel like my response is a combination of yours, where both yours, where it is like this trust, and it's just like, I think like when Trump was president, things were just so polarized that it was hard to get like 2 words in before I felt like I was appealing to the other side. And but if I could just get further and trust that, it was like a solution, that like there was a resolution, in that there was really kind of a blockade of certain kinds of thinking I thought that was happening. So and I feel like that's a little bit getting out of the pandemic. I kind of been thinking about writing outside of the pandemic, as the pandemic is at least the regulations around it are subsiding, and just getting out of the house and writing has been important. I felt like it was interesting to go through with the whole world, like not doing what you have to do, but what you need to do, when the pandemic first started. And that I thought that was really beautiful. That privilege was afforded to me and so many people. And then I think just, yeah, we how, I'm sure we would bring this up if we can talk more, but how being direct allows you to have a certain kind of presence and with others, in this time when we're so distant and far from one another. And my thoughts are with Palestine and how I'm hearing and learning so much about what's been happening over there. And I feel like it's really wonderful how people are mobilizing and using silences where there was silence, or that blockade, and expressing themselves. So I feel like the pandemic has kind of remade the world. So I feel like let's run, let's take all the residencies and get out there, and have a head start, use this head start on things.
I think the pandemic has exposed some seams. I mean, it seems that I think a lot of people are, people of color, like we already knew that was there, but for some other people, I think maybe because white America, the pandemic was happening to everyone. And some seams got exposed for that, white supremacist dominant narrative, in ugly ways too. Like I feel like there's been this influx of violence, and part of that for me is this desire to believe that the influx of violence is happening because white supremacy is kind of beginning to hit its last stands. Like it's feeling so under fire from all the work that we're doing, right? That it feels so threatened. And I want to keep threatening it.
Oh, yes.
Like I want to keep threatening it. I'm terrified of the violence that will come, but I feel like it's, it's going to get worse before it gets better. But we have to do it. Like we have to keep moving this needle, because we can't live like this. We just can't.
So true. Has anybody watched Exterminate All the Brutes on HBO Max?
No.
Oh my gosh, if you have not, please, it is so worth it. It's the same director who did I'm Not Your Negro.
Yeah.
And it's 4 parts, and it's a wonder that, as someone said, it's a wonder that it was even made. But it is about dismantling the whole idea of colonialism, and like it attacks all of this, and it's been a breath of fresh air in many ways, in a very still argument in America. So yeah. I want to believe that this is the dismantling, that this is the last gasp. I know the Time magazine did that article, 20 years ago, talking about the browning of America. And I knew from then that this was going to happen, because you can't tell people that your numbers are dwindling where you used to be this power base, and them not fight it. Because, for those who have to share power and who never share power before, it becomes an encumbrance. It becomes, a fight against their rights. And it's not. I mean, for those of us who've never had that power, or who've always been grasping at that power, it's a whole other thing. And I feel like we should keep grasping. And I want to keep climbing that rung, but I get so scared. I get so scared of the violence. I get so scared, but then I have to buck up, because I made people. And if I made people, then I have to be strong for them. And, but it's a weird time, man. It's you always think we're always living through history, but now it seems like we're living through history with a capital H. I was thinking about, it just, it's exhausting is what it is.
It is.
Just have one final question, and it's just about inspiration, because I know there's a lot of poets that are here today, and a lot of people that create, whether it's making pies in the kitchen or planting lavender in the garden. And I wanted to ask our poets here today, some of the, I don't know, some of what you feel inspires you, that lifts you, whether it appears in your poem or just kind of lifts your spirit in a way that makes you want to create and make something and put it out into the world.
I'll just jump in to say, it's funny that you mentioned planting lavender. I've become a huge gardener, not in just the past year for the pandemic, but it's been slowly growing, because I think it's important to establish that connection to the earth and to be part with it, to work with it rather than against it. And so I've gotten a lot of inspiration from that. I get a lot of inspiration from the things that I watch. I'm a pop culture junkie. So if it's not Exterminate All the Brutes, if it's Isabel Wickerson's cast, if it's, you know, stuff that my husband's teaching, stuff that we're doing at the folder, or books that I'm reading for the series, but also too for my children, because they're experiencing this world. You know, it's always like the cliche, they're experiencing this world for the first time, and the things that they see and how they experience it. And even though I've been teaching them to, you know, dismantle the patriarchy from within, in my son's case, I'm also teaching them how to dismantle toxic masculinity on both sides and to be ardent feminists, and anti-racist. It takes a lot of work, but it also introduces you to that indelible spirit of innocence and hope, and how much that can become the fuel to your fire to change, and to see the world in the way that you want to see it, rather than the way that it is, to look beyond the veil of today to the ideas of what can happen, and push yourself toward that. And that's all filtering into my work, all of it. But I'm really curious to hear from Joshua and Felicia too.
Thank you, Terri.
You know, Terri, this idea of radical imagination, like this idea of what the imagination, like we have to, you know, just what Lord said, we can't dismantle the master's house with the master's tools. Like we need to be imaginative and trust our brains, trust our instincts, trust that we can create things with our voices and our bodies inside of them, and are just allowing ourselves to be limitless. Like, I think imagination is so powerful, and so powerful beyond the art form. Like, I really do believe that, like, poetry is activism. I believe that because activism, it's very root. You trace it back, and it's about changing perspectives. It's about, and how do we change a perspective? Well, we create a world that makes someone think, and you know, we put it out into the world, and hopefully people are thinking, and that's a way we change perspectives. And me too, like being still and just being a natural being in a natural world. Like if it's just sitting outside in my yard and like listening, being quiet and listening, like that for me is extremely inspiring. The older I get, the more I realize I don't know anything, and it's so exciting. Like I want to learn more. I just want to completely like absorb it. and I think that wonder, that being comfortable in not knowing, is a place that I hadn't been when I was much younger, and I'm there now. And I taught Ross Gay's Book of Delights at the beginning of this semester, and my students and I, we both really needed it. And this idea that there's one of the essayists, Gay, writes about how he was starting to hoard the delights. Like he would keep a ledger of the delights, and he started to hoard them. And then one day he just ripped it up, because he realized by hoarding the delights, he wasn't trusting that delights are abundant and available at all points in time. And that really moved me, of like, I want to believe that the delight is always there, that joy is always there. Amid the horror is not opposite of the delight. Sometimes from the horror comes a delight, and we just have to trust that joy is there as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Joshua, did you want to add anything?
Just, I feel like, I feel like this has been really inspiring. I feel like Terri and Felicia, like there's a warmth that, and attentiveness that you've brought today that just reminds me of like being in art school, and then I grew up in a big family, and then learning of the library that you work at, and the projects that you're working on. Just it's really moving. So but this was a hard year. This is actually a really hard year for me, and I feel like I'm growing up. Tomorrow's my 30th birthday, and the pandemic's devastating, and almost everyone I know has lost someone. So, and it's just thinking about poetry and knowing that I know a little bit about it. For a while, I was like, I know a lot about poetry. Let me just write poetry. But now I feel like I'm back as being a student, and there's a lot of joy in that, and always being like a student of like, whether it's like of nature and seeing how birds have their own lives, and that are as traceable as like, our teenage years. The and then just the generosity of other people that has always been kind of unspoken, and thinking about that too, now that the pandemic has kind of exposed some of that. So and it made me reappreciate it. So I just think like, if you're, as poets, we always get down and out, and it's not a sign that we're doing something bad, but maybe a sign that we're just tired. And I encourage everyone just to like Felicia said earlier, just give yourself extra time and do something a little bit different. Don't be afraid to change your practice, and because yeah, there's just so much we don't know, and a lot of our knowledge is built on colonial from the empire. So any step that you can take is a big one away from that.
Yeah, that reminds me of a quote, begin anywhere. I think it's, I want to say it's John Cage. I could be getting that wrong. I'll find out. But I always think of it, begin anywhere, when I'm feeling kind of frozen or out of gas. So I think that we're going to close it up now. I loved hearing all of your poems and hearing you talk about your process, and it's just been a real delight for me. I was feeling pretty draggy before I got on here, and now I just feel totally rejuvenated. And I think I really get a lot of my inspiration from my fellow poets. So thank you all so much for sharing your work today. And thanks to everyone who attended. I really appreciate you being here. And I guess that's it. Have a beautiful Saturday afternoon. Bye.
Thank you, Emma. Thanks, Jen. Terri and Joshua, you're lovely. Thank you for sharing space.
Goodness, yes, this is like Emma. This has just been rejuvenating. I've been writing things down. And Joshua, happy pre-birthday. I put that in.
Yes.
The big 3-0.
Yeah, 30's awesome, man. Look, and don't let anybody tell you that 30's great, and so is 40.
I know 40's been good.
Oh my gosh, it's like all your cells come together, and you're like the pro version of you.
Yeah. Wow, I'm finally getting myself.
Exactly. Like, I know who I am, and don't come and play. Don't come and play.
Don't play.
Exactly. Don't play.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Great. Thank you so much, Emma. Thank you so much, Jen. Thank you, Joshua and Felicia. It was great to meet you all in this space, and I can't wait to read more.